It's 2 in the afternoon on Monday, November 24th. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. First, the stories we are following at this hour. South Korean lawmakers begin reviewing proposed bills related to North Korea's human rights situation. Both ruling and opposition parties say they hope to pass them before the year's end. The deadline for an agreement on the Iranian nuclear program is nearing, and the gap between Iran and Western powers reportedly remains, leaving expectations of an extended deadline. And a new report by the World Bank suggests some future impacts of climate change may simply be unavoidable at this point, even if governments act fast to cut greenhouse gas emissions. And we will get to those stories shortly, but let's begin with the latest from the National Assembly. Lawmakers are currently reviewing bills on improving the human rights situation in North Korea. It's an issue that has been on lawmakers' minds for years, but partisan differences have prevented progress. ARIRANG's National Assembly correspondent Kim Young-gil says it could be different this time around.
The National Assembly is stepping up efforts to pass bills on North Korean human rights, in line with recent efforts from the international community. The Parliamentary Foreign Affairs Committee on Monday began reviewing two bills related to North Korean human rights, one proposed by the ruling Saenuri Party and the other by the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy. The ruling party's bill focuses on documenting violations carried out by Pyongyang and developing plans to improve human rights conditions in the north. The main opposition's bill puts an emphasis on supporting the North Korean people through humanitarian aid. Both parties say they hope to pass these bills by the end of this year, but they'll first have to resolve their long-standing differences over the issue. A main source of contention is a suggestion from the ruling Saenuri Party that the human rights bill include government assistance to activist groups that fly anti-North Korea leaflets across the border. The main opposition party says if the bill includes any language indicating support for such groups, they will not pass it. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
A South Korean consortium will test transferring 40,000 tons of Russian coal from the Najin port in North Korea to South Korea's southern port city of Pohang from this Monday. A South Korean delegation will be in North Korea until Friday and carry out a technological inspection of the overall distribution process. Coal from a mine in West Siberia will be delivered from Kasan to Najin by rail. It is then going to be shipped on a Chinese tanker, and if everything goes as scheduled, it will arrive in Pohang on Saturday night. Now, back in the 1960s, it was still a very obvious trend to prefer boys over girls in Korea, but that trend has been changing slowly, and now the number of women is likely to exceed that of men next year for the first time in modern history. Shin Se-min has more.
The nation's population is about to undergo a major change in the next year. Women will outnumber men for the first time since 1960. Statistics Korea predicts that the number of women will stand at over 25.31 million by 2015, outnumbering men by 10,000. The agency attributed the change to two major social issues facing the country: the low birth rate and the rapid aging of the population. There are still more boys born in Korea than girls, but given that women have a longer life expectancy than men, their numbers will still be higher overall. But that's not all. The number of people over the age of 65 is also expected to grow rapidly to more than 7.1 million by 2017 from 6.4 million this year. The nation first became an aging society in the year 2000 when just 7% of the population was over 65. But at the current rate, the country could become a super-age society in 2026, when over 20% of its population will be over 65. Given these trends, the labor force is expected to fall, eventually pulling down the nation's growth rate. Experts say that to combat the low birth rate and aging population, and to prevent the economic growth rate falling in the longer term, the government must utilize a workforce of women, the elderly, and foreigners, and programs and services for these groups must be improved. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Now, but utilizing that workforce is easier said than done. The reality is that lots of married women have to choose between having a kid or pursuing their career goals here in Korea. And that's one of the reasons the nation's birth rate continues to hover in the low percentile. Our Kim Min-ji tells us more.
There was a time in the not-so-distant past when Korea promoted birth control and encouraged families to have fewer children. In the 1980s, the nation's population topped 40 million, and the government, acting on the fear that overpopulation would take a toll on food and housing supplies, rolled out a one-child campaign. It worked, and now, along with other factors, Korea has one of the lowest birth rates in the world.
Latest figures show that Korea's average fertility rate, which represents the number of children a woman is expected to have during her lifetime, is estimated at 1.3. That's the third lowest among 198 countries and well below the world average of 2.5.
Whether it be the high cost of raising a child or more women choosing their careers over motherhood, a growing number of couples are deciding to hold off on having kids. 29-year-old teacher Park Eun-ju says it's why she isn't a mom yet, even though she's been married for 2 years.
If I have a baby, my life will have to be centered around the child. Also, after becoming a mother, I may not be able to get a good enough job, and this will then lower my overall standard of living.
Park and others like her hope the government will offer more incentives like higher family support allowances and tax breaks to encourage women to give birth. However, OECD data shows the Korean government's spending to GDP on such benefits is one of the lowest among member nations. Some experts also say Korea's hyper-competitive society could be another factor keeping the fertility rate down.
If the government gives parents assurances that their children will be able to enjoy a standard level of happiness by getting an average education and landing an average job and working diligently, then the birth rate will naturally go up.
The expert added the government will have to invest more money and time into strengthening its child care and welfare policies to build public trust in the measures before it can expect to see the birth rate improve. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
More than half of Korea's largest companies saw their profits tumble in the first 3 quarters of the year due largely to the sluggish global economy. Seoul-based market researcher tumble.com says the combined operating profits of 55 of the top 100 listed firms on the Kospi stood at roughly $23 billion from January to September. Now that's down almost 30% from the same period last year. Now this drop has pushed the operating profit of all 100 listed firms together down as well by more than 15% over the same period. And the slowing economy has hit the labor market hard as well. Latest figures show 1 out of 4 people who changed jobs in Korea last year did so through no choice of their own. Statistics Korea says the number of workers forced to seek new employment stood at around 720,000 in 2013, which is up more than 100,000 from a year earlier. About half were laid off, while the other half had their temporary job contracts expire. Lower income earners were hit the hardest. The number of layoffs in the lowest 20% income bracket soared to 65,000 last year from 26,000 in 2012. When we used to think of exports, the first thing that came to mind was manufacturing goods. But nowadays, more emphasis is being given to exporting contents. And it's not limited to Hallyu or Korean wave items. People in the education industry say they are seeing more opportunities to go global. Here's our Kwon So-ah with this week's Industry Insight.
The school bell doesn't signal the end of the day for many Korean students. They are out of their classrooms, but private tutors are waiting for them. This nearly $30 billion private education industry has given birth to advanced learning products. And some of them are finding their way overseas. Tintin English publishes storybooks for preschoolers in China and Thailand. The company is taking advantage of the craze for English in Korea that led to a booming English education market. Cheongsang Language School recently signed a contract with major U.S. book distributor IPG, and its products recorded sales of around $20,000 in their first 2 months on Amazon. Experts say assessing the current volume of export of educational contents is difficult, but Professor Laah Hyun-kyung of Hanyang University estimates it's in the tens of millions of dollars.
Korea already has a good image as a very strong education country all over the world. Plus, we have a very strong IT techniques, so IT-based kind of learning package and the teaching package and the content development really attractive to foreign countries. That's combine these two, we can easily have a second K wave, it's so-called educational wave, I think.
Cheongdam Learning has integrated IT into its curriculum. Its flagship program, Loud Class, is a tablet PC-based platform created for interactive studying purposes in which students' responses can be shared and teachers can lead classes through a tablet PC. It also allows teachers to adjust contents to meet changing needs in the class.
Hi, Linda. Good to see you.
There's a lot of countries or school districts that have tablets, but they don't know how to use tablets. It's like having a car without an engine. It looks great, but that's the only factor that goes in. So we're creating this engine that helps students, it helps the teachers, it helps the parents.
And the company is exporting the platform. In Thailand, Cheongdam kicked off a Loud Class pilot program this week.
The world is so small, connected with the ICT. So we think that having more and more experiences from outside that would benefit to our students.
The president of IPST says there are several areas where Thailand should be benchmarking from Korea, especially math and sciences. Industry observers note that Korean firms must fully understand the needs of their target markets and localize their content to further promote their exports. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Over in Vienna, 6 world powers and Iran are finding ways to come to an agreement on Tehran's nuclear program before Monday's deadline, but apparently it's not an easy task. Reports now say an extended deadline may be on the table as one of the options. Choi Woo-sun has this report.
While the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council and Germany make last-ditch efforts to reach an agreement on Iran's nuclear program by November 24th, expectations are that the deadline will be extended. Officials involved in talks in Vienna on Sunday said a second extension was being considered as the two sides were no way near a comprehensive agreement on Tehran curbing its nuclear development in return for the US and the EU lifting sanctions. The 6 powers already postponed the deadline once back in July. The so-called P5+1 and Iran differ significantly on how much of its nuclear program Iran should give up and when the international community should ease sanctions.
Here we're still quite a long way apart, and there are some very tough and complex issues to deal with, but we're all focused right now on trying to get that deal done.
While a comprehensive deal is unlikely to be realized by Monday, the BBC, citing Iranian sources, said a political agreement of some sort or a reference to parameters of a future deal may be announced.
I won't anticipate the results, but we're continuing to work. We have a final deadline for tomorrow night to find an agreement, but it has to be positive and enable us to work for peace.
Amid the uncertainties, Reuters, citing Iranian sources, says Tehran has a plan B that involves turning to Beijing and Moscow, both of which hold veto power at the UN, for diplomatic and economic cooperation if no deal is made in Vienna. The feasibility of that plan, however, is being questioned as China faces a slowing economy at home and Russia is facing its own international sanctions for its intervention in Ukraine. Choi Yu-sun, ARIRANG News.
In other international news, China has long been locked in territorial disputes with its neighboring countries in the East and South China Sea, and this new finding may trigger an even bigger row with the U.S. once again urging China to stop what it's doing. Connie Lee tells us what the findings are.
Satellite imagery suggests that China is building an artificial island that could be turned into an airfield. According to U.S. military spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Poole, China is working toward building that airfield as part of a vast land reclamation project in the Spratly Islands located in the South China Sea. Now, the location of this island is what's raising concerns. It is being built in waters where Beijing is currently locked in territorial disputes with neighboring countries like the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam. The U.S. has long urged China to refrain from provocative acts in the area and has called on China to halt the project. Lieutenant Colonel Poole said the U.S. urges China to stop its land reclamation program, adding that China should engage in diplomatic initiatives to encourage all sides to restrain themselves in these sorts of activities. The satellite images and a report from the defense publication IHS Jane's Defense show that China has been using dredgers for the past 3 months to build the island, which is massive in size. It's about 3,000 meters long and up to 300 meters wide on the reef, which was previously underwater. The report adds that the dredgers are also creating a harbor big enough to dock tankers and other warships. With its latest move, it appears China is asserting its claims in the South China Sea. At an international conference in Beijing over the weekend on new regional security architecture, China's vice foreign minister said that Asian countries bear primary responsibility of their region. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Global warming is a subject of concern that most of us are aware of, yet forget or neglect oftentimes to do our share in tackling the issue. But we might not have the luxury to choose anymore, with the World Bank releasing alarming findings. Park Ji-won has the details.
Most glaciers in the Andes will have completely melted away by the year 2080 if the world fails to counter the threat of climate change. This is the stark warning issued by the World Bank in its latest climate change report. It concludes the world's average temperature could rise by 4 degrees Celsius by the end of the century if the world doesn't take appropriate actions to stop global warming. The report, which mostly focuses on Latin America, the Middle East, and North Africa, says glaciers have already significantly retreated in the Andes. It says that if the trend continues, cities around the mountain range could be at risk of flooding and freshwater supplies could start to dry up. The grim projection carries on by saying that if the average global temperature rises by more than 4 degrees Celsius, sea levels will rise by more than 60 centimeters. This would increase the risk of storms and tropical cyclones, especially for low-lying countries and small island states. The report also predicts that in the Middle East and North Africa, warmer average temperatures will threaten already scarce water resources and negatively affect crop yields. The report, drawn up from the work of international experts, calls on governments to aggressively tackle their carbon emissions. The report also urges the development of alternative energy, appropriate agricultural technologies, and raising the energy efficiency of buildings and public transport. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
American soap operas have quite the fan base here in Korea, but some in the industry say Korean dramas are becoming more and more popular in the U.S. And today, to talk about this latest trend, we have our Im Yoon-hee joining us in the studio. Hello there, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. Hello. So actually, Korean dramas have proven to be quite an effective means of transportation, of exporting the Hallyu or the Korean wave abroad. Now, in particular, the U.S. has shown significant growth in a very robust market and shows potential for more growth. So take a look.
It's not news that Korean dramas have been a hit around the world. With access to the internet, they can be streamed pretty much anywhere. And to keep up with the demand, new dramas are being created all the time. But just who is involved in this Korean drama craze?
Per year, I watch around 10 Korean drama because I watch it every day when I go home for 2 hours.
With multiple sites online offering Korean dramas with subtitles, often in many different languages, it's become accessible by a much wider audience. In particular, the market in the US shows that its viewers come from many different ethnicities as well. Of the different genres within Korean dramas, the most popular is undoubtedly the romantic comedy, most watched especially by women ranging in their teens to their 30s. And with English subtitle service made available almost immediately after the release of a drama, Korean dramas can now be watched by anyone, anywhere in the world.
In the American market, the number of viewers looks to be growing, and in the Central and South American regions, we expect it to grow as well.
So did they also talk about why or what makes Korean dramas so popular?
So there has been some discussion on this. I think it's a lot of people's different opinions, but really people say that a strong storyline is what really attracts them. So something that's predictable but also full of surprises. But at the same time, of course, the actors and actresses are a huge part. There's skill in acting as well as, you know, their image that they do create, and that really helps to contribute to creating this hit drama series.
And as it is for most cases, some people do get addicted to watching these TV soap operas.
Right. So a recent survey actually revealed that 35% of the viewers in the U.S. claim that they watch Korean dramas every day for 3 to 6 hours a day.
Wow.
29% claim that they watch for more than 10 hours a day. So there's definitely an addictive aspect of these Korean dramas that is proving to really catch them. I think the directors are doing a good job on creating these dramas.
And that's literally half a day. You're watching TV dramas half a day.
Right.
That's something, right? And the U.S., not just the U.S., but China is known to be a huge importer of Korean dramas.
Right, so China is also one of the largest importers of the Korean drama. And so in fact, they also have a lot of Korean drama tours that they offer here in Korea that really does attract quite a few Chinese tourists as well. But there is, however, talk of a new regulation that they're going to impose in China in the future, and they might actually create the stricter censorships over the drama, so that might actually decrease the number of Korean dramas imported into China, but we'll have to wait and see about that.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Yoon-hee, for bringing us the story today.
Always a pleasure.
It's the last Monday of November here in Korea. Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. It was gray and foggy this morning, and by the looks of it, it won't be brightening up throughout the whole day, the rest of the day either. Now, without the sun, temperatures won't be too warm as well, ranging into the low to the high teens depending on where you are. Now, not only it is cloudy, but rain is in the forecast all over the nation, except for here in Seoul. It's already started to rain over in Gyeonggi-do and Chuncheon-do provinces and other regions as well. Now, the rain is mostly focused over on the southern parts of the peninsula today. We're expecting 10 to 40 millimeters, while those southern regions and the coastline and the Jeju Island are expecting up to 60 millimeters, while Chuncheon-do and Gangwon-do provinces will have ongoing drizzles or light rain up to 20 millimeters. And to our readings for today, Seoul will peak at 13 this afternoon, meanwhile the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top to 14 and 16 degrees. And to other regions, Jeju Island peaks to 19, Dokdo hits 14, while Langkang be a bit lower at 13 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and have a wonderful day.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with more at 4 p.m. Korea time. Bye-bye for now.